Now we're recording.
Now we are recording. It is March 2nd, the year 2023. Welcome aboard, everybody. Listen to the Crushing Iron podcast, episode 663.
Yeah, and you got Wonder Mike on the mixer.
Remember
that? Remember Wonder Mike?
No, I don't have any idea who Wonder
Sugar Hill
Mike is.
Gang, man. That goes way back. That's first big rap
song
song
ever.
ever.
Bit before.
Rapper's Delight.
That was a little bit before.
Wonder Mike.
Yeah, that must have been was that pre-1980? It had to have been.
It was right around there, I think.
Yeah, had to have been.
Wonder Mike.
I mean, I was just born, so yeah, way before my time.
Big Bang
but
Hank.
it is a winter's back. It's gray.
Oh,
it's gloomy. It was 20 degrees this morning on my run. 20. 20.
It's special.
Yesterday, I washed my car outside. I woke up this morning. I was like, I knew we were supposed to have like a cold front coming in. Things are yo-yoing back and forth, but man, it was. It's funny though, and we won't keep talking about the weather like we have been the last two episodes. But
gotta quit talking about
I was
the
talking.
weather.
Yeah, well, I got my hair cut, and I was talking to my stylist, who has
haircut.
yet to make another comment about my receding hairline.
You must be taking collagen.
It's definitely not the collagen. It's just the lighting in there. But when you yo-yo back and forth with the weather, you get soft really quickly.
Yeah, you do.
And I think that just goes with everything. When December rolled around, we had those everywhere in the country had those like -10, -20 days. I was out. We were in Nashville. I was running in like -10, 15, doing 7, 8 miles. It wasn't fun, but I got it done. You get a few 60 degree days in you, and all of a sudden it hits 20, and you're like, man, it's brutal outside. You just it is interesting how quickly we get soft on like both ends of the spectrum, from the really, really cold temps, but like beginning of May, into April, May, you get those first like 70 degree days, and it feels like an absolute burner.
Yeah.
And God, it is so hot. Like, here we go, summer again. Come mid-August, it's 103. You're like, oh man, I might need a hoodie today. Like, it is just, I've got the chills.
It's a little windy.
It's a little windy. It is. It's funny how soft we get, and how we always complain about the weather, but we don't complain about you, our listeners. We appreciate you. If it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. We appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps and also a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open and honest discussion about what we're going through in life, not just as human beings on this planet, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. We also talk frequently about what our own athletes are going through. Mike and I work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level triathletes looking at the very first 5K or sprint triathlon, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to world championships, and from all over the country, from all over the world, everyone in between. And we'll use the feedback loop we have with them and training peaks, emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We also utilize our Facebook group. You can search that, Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question, we'll let you right in. Awesome community, fantastic resource, wonderful people. And now that we are churning and burning in the beginning of the race season, got our first athlete doing Ironman New Zealand this weekend, and then you got Oceanside in like 4 weeks. You got the first ITU race this weekend. It's race season. Clearmont's also a draft legal event in Sarasota. That's this weekend. It's upon us. We're in March. It's the March Madness version of triathlon. So be part of that community. If you got questions, whether it's training related, race related, gear related, ask them. It's a wonderful, wonderful group and a helpful community. So we'll go in there like we will today, do a bit of a Q&A, take the pulse of the community, answer as many questions as we can. But that's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads, but we do have an agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
I feel like I need to add a little heartbeat right in there for the pulse of the community.
Yeah, DJ Jazzy Jeff. Is that what you were before?
Wonder Mike, man. Big Bang Hank.
Wonder Mike on the mic.
What's the other guy's name? There's three of them. Anyway, the Sugar Hill Gang. You remember that song, right? Rapper's Delight, the biggest.
Yeah, I remember that song.
Yeah, that was those guys. My name's Wonder Mike. That was his line.
I didn't
like
pick up on that.
Hello. What's that?
Yeah, I didn't pick up on the rap or the hip hop until I was a little bit later in life. I was my like Gen X generation of like 80s and 90s. It was all alternative all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the golden age of alternative music. Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Metallica, Guns N' Roses. I mean, that was it. That's all you cared about.
I know.
Offspring.
It was a very depressed age in music.
311. I mean, it was awesome. It was such a very depressed age.
Oh my goodness.
It really kind of was. It was the original depressed grunge phase that now is like, I guess, like apparently come back into be like very popular.
That makes sense. It's a good time for it.
It is a good time for it. It's also a good time for our Q&A.
It is.
We had a pretty good list. It's interesting because it is racy, and so you got a lot of full questions. I'm like, man, it's early March, but a lot of full Ironman questions. Before we get into that, two important things. One, while we don't do sponsors or ads, we do have a way for you to chip in and appreciate us and support the podcast. You can always go to our website, c26triathlon.com. Open the tab to the online shop, the Gear Hub, and purchase some gear. It's the best way you can support the podcast, get yourself some swag, and support us in the process. And also go into iTunes and not only just subscribe, but also give us a solid review. Show us that you love us. That's the best way to support the podcast, to keep it. I mean, I'm not going to say keep it ad free. We're going to be ad free no matter what, because that's just how we roll. And then the other thing, housekeeping wise, if I say this a lot frequently throughout the year, I'm going to say it again. If you haven't subscribed to the World Triathlon app, they're the ITU World Triathlon app, to get all the ITU races, the sprint and Olympic distance races throughout the course of the year. This is the first weekend they're in Abu Dhabi. I think races start tomorrow. Subscribe, watch them, get the app, get the year-long pass. I don't even know how much. I think it's like $70, which is, I mean, what's like two trips to Starbucks for most people.
Or 2 T-shirts. It is. From the Crushing
Iron. Well, yeah. I mean, as long as you get the T-shirt first, and then then get the app.
Rolling it in. Yeah.
But it is it's awesome. It is so much fun to watch. You will learn a lot. And to me, it's the most exciting format in triathlon. They're short. It's open water swim. It's a 1 or 2 loop sprinter Olympic distance swim, multiple loop bike, and then multiple lap run. It's very, very spectator friendly, and it's very fun to watch. And you will learn a ton just by watching these athletes, how they pace themselves, their strategy, listen to the commentators. They're also great. And they are the best athletes in the world. Our sport is so fixated on 70.3s and full distance races. Well, the best Ironman and 70.3 distance racers you see now and pay attention to, they're professionals. They usually move up from ITU because they're no longer competitive. That's how fast the people are there. Obviously, you've got Gustav Beed and Christian Blumenfeld trying to go back and forth, which will be interesting to see if they're able to do that. They're now focused on Paris. But it's going to be interesting to see how well or not well they do in these short course distance racing. So tune in, watch, learn a bit. We don't have a discount code because that's not what we do, but it's a great learning experience, a great thing to watch on a trainer, and just a great educational experience and fun triathlon racing to take part during your winter doldrums while you're stuck inside. So do that. Without further ado, Amy Morgan Taylor. First question. What are your thoughts on racing 2 full Ironmans close together? I've heard different opinions that you can only really race one of them. But then I've also heard it's a good plan because you get 2 racing experiences with 1 training block. And if you want to be good at Ironman, you need racing experience. This is actually a really, really good question. I think a couple things. One is, how do you define really close together?
Yeah.
Are we talking like 2 weeks apart? Now I've had multiple athletes in the past do full distance races 2 weeks apart. I don't think it's responsible in any way, shape, or form. I do, in fact, believe you can only race one of them because the amount of damage it does to you, you will not feel great on the second race. And if you're going to try and nail the second race, the first one needs to be way, way, way far out. There is no such thing as a marathon training day. Period. And you can say, that you can really only race one of them, but you get 2 racing experiences with 1 training block. I disagree. For a lot of reasons. One, there's a difference in doing one and racing one. If you've trained really, really, really well, and you are there's traditionally, like, I think 2 different categories when it comes to full distance racing, and this goes for 70.3s as well. You've got completers and competers. Completers, you're just trying to finish the day. You're just trying to get it done. It's your first one, maybe your second one, maybe you've had DNFs, or it's your first time doing one. Your only focus is to complete the day, which is, in my opinion, it should be everyone's first and primary goal, no matter what experience level you have. Always finish the day if you can. And you got the competers, and those kind of fall into 2 like subcategories: competing against yourself, right, to beat previous times, or competing against yourself and other people for places, the top percentage of your age group. If you really want to race a 70.3 or race an Ironman, you'll be destroyed for a month. It is a minimum recovery period of a month. So while you could say, I wouldn't say you get 2 racing experiences. I would say you get 1 race experience, as in you get to participate in an Ironman distance race, and then the other one, you get an actual racing experience where you are actually racing. Very, very, very different thing in participating in an event and actually going out and racing an event. Because if you race an event, an Ironman, or even a 7.3, depending on the training you've done beforehand, you're going to be shelled for a while. I mean, shelled for a while. You burnt your match, and what you're asking to do is burn it again. I would say 6 to 8 weeks minimum between 2 in order to have a really good, rebuild. So again, it's a relative on what your definition of close is. Like, I had an athlete last year who did Ironman Texas and then Ironman St. George, was on the podium in Texas and then top 10 in their age group in St. George. You have to be very, very, very intelligent and, specific with your training in between. Again, this is a 2-week, and you probably need to do more than you think you do, because what happens is you're so shelled, you need to get moving really, really quickly again to generate blood flow, to get all the waste out of your body, to promote recovery, and not tell your body it's time to shut down. Right? That's a huge thing people feel during like recovery weeks. If you take too much time off and remove too much intensity in a recovery week, your body's done 3 weeks of working out every single day, 21 days. You take a couple days off, or you take and then it's like, oh, your body's like, oh, we don't need to do this anymore. We can chill out. We can shut down. And then it starts to go into detraining mode. So one, how close together is it? It's dependent on different people. It's also about your training leading up to it. If you do, a ton of training leading up to your first one, and then you go race it, you're not only recovering from the day of racing, you're recovering from the giant block of training you did beforehand. And so there's a lot that goes into it. But I would encourage you to kind of rethink like racing experiences and training block. There's no such thing as a training marathon, especially after you've ridden 112 and swam 2.4. That's why people don't do the race before the race. You get destroyed. Like, you only got to do it once. So I would very much caution against doing an Ironman really, 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 really close together. You're much better off, maintaining getting speed, because you're not going to get faster in between the two. You're just going to have done the distance. But why take that energy, and not just the physical demands of energy, but why take the mental and emotional energy, out of it, and just save it for one? I guess I rarely ever see the point in doing them back to back. A lot of people did, got a slot to St. George, or got asked to St. George for, a couple variety of reasons. They just kind of popped in the calendar. It's never ideal. And I never encourage, because if you want to do it well, it's going to really, 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 really hurt. And yes, you can consider it a training boost, but again, that's the marathon that crushes you. If anything, do the swim. I got an athlete last year who went to Chattanooga, and then they had Ironman Florida, right? So we're 6 weeks, right, into September, early November. and this is more the common one, right? The one I gave you, the Texas and George and St. George, that's an athlete who's been around the block a ton, been to Kona, very, very accomplished athlete, super deep base, training. Southern athlete doing it was signed up for Ironman Chattanooga and Ironman Florida. So again, late September, whole of October is free, and then you got the first Saturday in November for Ironman Florida. And they said, all right, I want to get in a training day, right, at Ironman Chattanooga, but my A race is Florida. I was, okay. Dealing with some run niggles here and there. I said, all right, the best thing you can do is to, do the swim. And again, it's dependent on the race, right? It's an easy swim, which is why it was rated, the number one Ironman swim in the country, according to the participants, is because the easiest pie. Do that easy swim, right? You tell someone to do that easy swim versus Wisconsin or Lake Placid or these other like really difficult swims, more energy, more stress. So it's a perfect swim. Do the swim, do the bike, chill out, and then you're allowed to run the first 10K max half. And then you are to shut it down, period. Because the run is what smokes you. And there are plenty of options on the Ironman Chattanooga course to bail, right? To bail after a 10K when you're coming back into town, bail it when you come back over to Barton, over the bridge. It's very easy to bail on that course. And I'm tracking her. And, of course, as typical triathlete, 10K marker goes off, beep, half marathon, Ironman split comes on the tracker, beep. And I'm thinking, all right, she's done. But guess what the fuck happened?
She kept going.
18K split comes in, beep. I'm like, son of a bitch, here we go. Finished. PR. It had an unbelievable race. Guess what happened in Florida? Goes down, gets there, calls it a day after the swim. Didn't have it in her.
Yeah.
That's the most likely scenario, is that your second one that you think is going to go well isn't. Because not only did you burn all of your physical matches during the race, right? She PR'd, she had an awesome race, but mentally and emotionally, the amount of energy it takes to dig deep to race it, how painful it is. So telling yourself, it's like telling yourself to touch a hot stove again. Like once you've touched it, you're like, no, I'm good. I'm set. I don't want to do that again. So asking yourself and then knowing when you toe the line that morning, do I have it in me today to ask that of myself? The answer for most people is usually no.
A lot there, dude. I was just writing something down. This kind of reminds me a little bit of Roger Bannister's, when he broke the 1 minute mile, everybody started breaking the 1 minute mile. I remember like 20 years ago, probably.
The what? The 1 minute mile?
The 1 minute or 4 minute mile.
I was like, man, they have really gotten fast in these new carbon shoes.
Yeah, the 4 minute mile. But anyway, it's sort of like 20 years ago, doing an Ironman was a huge deal, and 10 years ago it was a big deal. And now I feel like because of what the pros have kind of set the tone a little bit when they do a lot of back-to-back and a lot more people are doing them, it's kind of that thing. It's sort of snowballing. Some more people are thinking, man, I could do back or 2 or 3 in a year type thing. I mean, it's always shelved me, but what was interesting about that story you were just telling is that I think it's a testament to, I mean, you're going into this race and it's not your A race and you're not thinking about it, whatever, but like how much pressure that takes off you and how much more you can relax on the course. And then sometimes the best things happen. My best Ironman was Chattanooga one year when I was sick and I was just not expecting anything out there. And it was a great way to kind of keep me in check, because that's the thing, right? Is like Ironman races, they're obviously super difficult, but they should ideally feel fairly easy as far as pace and effort. But I think, when most people, even out on the bike, they're at, instead of like they might be kind of going zone 2 or whatever, but the effort feel is like way over already. It's already starting to creep up out there. And it's just difficult because of the pounding you put on yourself throughout that run and off the bike. And I think you're absolutely right. But I do think more and more people, and it's all relative to the person, because some people are just really trained up and they just do it all the time. And, they're, routinely going out to ride for 3 or 4 hours and then maybe knocking out a 6-hour ride or something like that. I think there's a lot of people that just sort of live that lifestyle that can pull that off. But if you're kind of not sure about one and thinking about adding another, that's kind of a weird place, man, because like for me, man, I whenever I'm done with Ironman, like you said, I mean, it's a month, it's sometimes 2 months of just getting my shit back together and kind of even wanting to do anything. But you're so right about the other thing is that once you're done, you just got to get right back into it. I mean, I've done that with halves, or I've had 3 or 4 weeks between after a full going into a half, and vice versa. I've done both. The time we did that, my first full, we went and did that Goose Pond race a month later. I literally did nothing between the full and the half, and I pulled it off, but it wasn't very comfortable. But I was all right. But I think going the other way, I mean, you just got to get right back at it, I think, because the longer you sort of sit around and let things fester, the harder it gets to just even want to do it, because you're like stiff and sore, and you just got to kind of get through that stiff and soreness as quick as possible, I think. And then, rest up and not do anything too crazy. But, if you're ready to do it mentally, I just think that's a great story you told, because it's like the A race was the second one, but then it turned out to be the first. So yeah, those kind of things, I mean, that just to me is just a huge testament of going into these races. And, I don't want to say Ironman should be easy, but if you're trained right, it should be mostly fairly easy, I think. It's a grinder and it hurts your butt and your arms and everything like that, but you should be able to go at paces that aren't going to crush you. I mean, I knew I knew a woman that was doing, I think it was something maybe like Chat, or no, I think it was Kona actually, and she was signed up for Wisconsin, and I was like, go out there and just swim and bike, like you're saying, kind of, because it was a few weeks before, and I was like, that'll be a great training day or whatever. And I saw her on the second loop of the bike out there, and she wasn't ready for that course at all. And she was cursing me out, man. Like it almost stole her soul and took the love away from the game for Kona. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think more and more people are obviously doing it. I think if it just becomes your lifestyle, it probably makes it easier. But if you're not at that level to really almost kind of own an Ironman, I think it's a tricky business.
And the last thing on that, before we make it an entire podcast, is just like with anything, it also very, very dependent on which race you choose, right? Like, St. George last year, beast of a course, and was hotter than Hades. People were dropping like flies, right? Compared to a race like maybe Ironman Florida, right? That gets pretty favorable temps, right? And you could be the same fitness level athlete and go to one race versus another and have a 2-hour difference. That's so much. That's for a lot of people, that's like 20% of their race extra of time. Not just the time, but the heat, right? How much it takes out of you, right? From a physiological standpoint, and then from a psychological standpoint, your Wisconsin one is a perfect example. Because the hardest part of that day wasn't people's fitness. It was dealing with the cold. And in order to deal with the cold and the wind and the rain, it didn't take fitness. It took your mind. And it took your soul. How bad do you really want it? You only have so much of that each year. It's just, you just do. Whether you want to admit it or not, you only have that much drive and willpower, or to better describe it, you only have so much fight in you each year.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And if you went in that race with a very limited or drained level of fight, you didn't finish. You stopped. And it wasn't because it was fitness. It was because the day sucked the living life out of you. It was just like one after another, and so you got into, again, if you want to race your best, you got to have fight, because you got to go to the next level. You got to go to the next level of effort, the next pace, the next watt target. You have, in order to really, really race it, you got to have the fight. And there's only so much you can have, because it's kind of like stepping in a boxing ring. Eventually you just don't want to you just don't want to come back out for the next round, because you all you're doing is taking a beating after beating after beating, right? Not getting knocked out, but just body shot after body shot after body shot after body shot maybe being knocked down a few times. That's what people do when they dig deep in these epic workouts, throughout the year, or these gigantic stupid bricks that people do where they destroy themselves before the race. Jack Daniels always said, don't leave your race in training. And a lot of people do that. And that's a great way to do it, is to go all in. But at some point you're not going to want to get off your stool and come back out for the next round. But you can handle it probably fitness wise, but psychologically you're done. Next question, Kevin Drury, ways to make base training more fun. That's a big one this time of year. A few things. One is understand and realize that fitness is fun. Feeling better is fun. Being able to, push, a lower heart rate with higher watts, that's fun. And then the races you signed up for this long distance race, that's the main goal, is to be as aerobically fit as possible. If you've got a couple things you can do run wise and bike wise, that's the most. Bike, I think, especially, is the one most people just tend to really just die a slow death on the trainer doing an hour and a half of zone 2 work, right? Usually if you can get outside, it doesn't matter for zone 2. Those are like my favorite runs. You just kind of zone out and enjoy the day. But on the bike specifically, I guess that's one I'll give an example for is, if you've got like a 30 watt range, in your zone 2, and they're trying to do 5 minutes at the low end, 5 minutes at the high end, 5 minutes at the low end, 5 minutes at the high end. Every 10 minutes, get out of your saddle for a minute, try to get the gear that's right to keep it in a zone 2 or maybe low zone 3, and slowly keep your body stable and slowly move your legs. It'll be a leg burner. Your heart rate won't go sky high. But there's a lot of ways you can break things up, right? Or do 20 minutes at 20 minutes zone 2 low. 20 minutes regular cadence low zone 2, 20 minutes high zone 2, lowest gear possible. Just things to, and then I always use the lap button. I know a lot of people, look on Zwift and stuff like that, but I feel like time just dies. It's like waiting for water to boil and paint to dry, because it's hey, this is how many miles you got, and this is what your time is going. It just drains you. So there's a lot of ways, I think, to kind of trick your mind into, doing different things, but staying in the same zone. You don't have to pedal the same cadence the whole time, or, like I said, drift in between, the zones, and just make things more fun. And only look at the lap time. Don't look at the total time. That's another kind of a key thing. People put their total time. I'm like, man, that is just brutal. It's like hopping on the treadmill with no towel over the dashboard and staring at your total time, where it's the slowest minutes on the planet are 1, watching baseball, and number 2, on the dashboard of a treadmill. That's how slow time moves. And so, especially with cycling, is do that. But if the other stuff, like, getting fit is fun. And I think that's just a thing that people have to wrap their brain around, is easy work is fun, because you should feel energized. You should do it endlessly and know that it's having a tremendous, aerobic benefit.
Yeah. What about watching chess? That's fun.
Yeah, but no one watches chess. So
I know.
I could use as an example.
But listen, I love this question. I think you just got to go all in on it. I mean, I talk about it all the time about, like, really just kind of being there. And I think the more you embrace what's going on there, I had a guy that was big into meditation, a friend of mine back in the day, and he used to experiment with because he was driving all the time, long drives and stuff. And he started experimenting with this idea of just meditating while driving, like being aware, but not, but he wouldn't listen to music or any kind of thing like that. And he swore that after a while he got better, and he seemed the time just flew by. But it's all about kind of not being out of your head and thinking about, man, I got to go do this and this and that. And I mean, that when your training is going well, when you're kind of just in your breath. And I think that, like going long swims, you go to the point, you're like, shit, I got to go 4,000 a day. That's the only way for me to get through it, is just to be really breathing in that moment and stuff. And not only that, I think that this is buried in this question is something very interesting. I think one of the tricks is to really go hard on your hard stuff, really go after it. And then you may welcome these days a little bit more. You know what I mean? So like if you're kind of gray zone in your whole hard days and intervals and things like that, then you don't appreciate what a, recovery type of a session is. And I think that's a huge secret of training is that, we always hear whatever, you don't go slow or easy enough on your easy days and hard enough on your hard days. And that's like one of the biggest keys to training. And I think, a good portion of triathletes probably don't push their hard days enough. And then they don't recognize a recovery day as something that's good for them. And that's something that they should embrace and use as a piece of the puzzle rather than just thinking of it as a boring, it doesn't matter kind of session, It's just like really put value on it.
Yeah. And I love that. It's such a great point. And the reason is because most people go somewhat hard all the time.
Right.
So there is no easy and there is no really, really hard. So they're just somewhat harding all the time. And that's why, they, like you said, they can't appreciate, the easy stuff. Like example, I went out yesterday, I ran 8 miles. I had in some pickups and it was a pretty solid 8-mile run, rolling terrain, intentional. And I was around, I don't know, 805, 806 pace, heart rate in the 150s. And I had a recovery run today, easy 45 minutes. And I was so ready to embrace it because, and even though my legs felt a little bit better, I was so focused on the easy part of it. So today's run, I think I averaged, by the way, Waffles, his birthday is tomorrow. He'll be 1 year old. He PR'd today with a 4.7 mile run. I took Waffles with me. We ran, and my goal was to keep it as slow as I possibly could and to just feel more energized when I got done. So I think my average heart rate was like 144, 140 was 10 beats lower. And then I was around 9-minute, 903s maybe. Even though I felt a lot better than I thought I would, there was purpose into it because I wasn't only thinking about today's run. I was thinking about why I'm doing today's run. I'm doing it because of yesterday's run. I'm doing it so I can do Saturday's run. And I think that the point you brought up is so awesome because most people just think of like, and I'm going to do this right now. Man, I'm going to do zone 2. It's so boring. And I'm like, well, if you need to be entertained, then, do something different because you're not going to see the improvement you want to do unless you can do these stuff. Or you aren't sure and you're not bought in because you're not really 100% convinced that your training is laid out in a way where everything complements each other. Right. And that's one of the biggest issues with quote unquote, aerobic training is you are so obsessed or conditioned to do things moderately hard all the time that you can't ever go hard enough. So you can't really appreciate, those days. So it's a great point. But again, even, change things up a little bit, or find a good Netflix series to watch.
Yeah.
Neil Bracewell. I'm interested in nutrition during a full Ironman in Texas. Will there be enough aid stations at the bike course to get plenty of nutrition, or should I plan on carrying food gels with me? Great question. I always suggest carrying your own. In a full carry at minimum 56 miles worth of goods. You can't always depend on the aid stations. And unless you've trained specifically what the aid stations are dealing out, dishing out, or giving away, then you're not sure how well it's going to digest it or improve your GI system, or it's going to have the right amount of carbohydrates and sugar in it. It's all a guess. So I would carry on board with you something to get through a little bit more than 56 miles. You'll have a spot in the middle called special needs where you can stop, get off your bike, refill all your bottles, and do that. So I always recommend carrying on person, whatever it is you need, and not depending, because even if you go roll through aid stations, you could roll through, but there are more drop bottles and missed bottles than there are gained bottles at Ironman bike aid stations, because people roll by and you got volunteers who don't know how to hand off. You got who have only ridden inside. Every single session they don't have to grab a bottle and at the same time. It's chaos. For me personally, it is I've never done a flying distance right then. We've got some pretty good blooper reels we could probably put out from your Crushing Iron videos. People coming in and out of T1 and back into T2 with some epic like concrete eating moments coming out of transition. And then people who stare at their pedals and it takes them 75 minutes to get clipped in. That's dangerous. And then aid stations, because you get people swerving all over the place. They can't handle their bike with more than two hands. So then they're stuck, or they pull over the side of the road, or they stop. You get volunteers. It gives me anxiety. I usually like try to go to the left, like close as I can to the center line, and speed down to the very end and grab one. But then you got to make sure you grab it, because if you don't, you're done, right? Because you got to go wait to the next one. So train, race with what you trained with, and you just use the water, when you can get it to, top off whatever it is you have, or help cool off your quads, your neck, your face, your chest, whatever it is. But yeah, carry on person, what you need for at least 56 miles, and you can reload, if you will, at the special needs, which is traditionally halfway or in and around the 52 to 60 mile mark.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good advice there, man. You want to have a stash. I go back and forth sometimes with these aids, because sometimes I just get a different feel for what I want to have or whatever, but I always have enough. And like you said, I tend to end up leaving most of my stuff in special needs. I don't know. I've gone back and forth with changing out bottles and stuff like that, but I've been fortunate to be someone who can at least deal with the on-course stuff for the most part. And I don't know, but I like what you're saying there. You should just bring it. I mean, I don't think you should have 800 goos taped to your bike, but that's just me. It's like, I was like, whoa.
I know. Some people look like,
it's like
some
cards
people,
flapping
some
in the
people
wind.
you could, I mean, you could carry like, 2 5s and a couple singles and ride on the bike course Ironman, and people legit have more on board than a taco food truck on a Tuesday. I mean, they're loaded down. They've got 6 rear bottles, ouncer front hydration. Then you look down in the top tube and they've got those 2 trustables, 4 gels on top of that, and like 3 bananas in their back jersey pocket. And they're like, man, I feel like in training I'm good, but then I get on the bike course and I just can't get up a hill. And you're like, no shit, Sherlock. It's like you've got a red wagon full of, a lemonade stand you're trying to carry up the hill because you've got so much on board. It is insane. Like how much money, right, people spend on an aerodynamic, quote unquote, super bike, right, and race wheels and a race helmet. Lightest this, lightest that, carbon this, carbon that, deepest wheel possible, wax my chain, the fastest, the pulleys, fastest, tubeless, and obsessing about it. Their bike fit is horrendous, right? Mm-hmm. They look like they're sitting up so high that their navel is leading the way. And then they've got so much food on board that you've added like 15 pounds extra to your bike. And you're like, there's a better way. There is a much better way of being efficient with all these things. So I'll carry things on you. Also be very mindful of, do I have too much and what is too much, right? You don't want to worry, but you don't want to have, you don't want to be a hoarder, right? You found, hey, I might use that. Kind of like the AV cables everyone has 19 different pairs of in their garage, right? The red, yellow, and white cords, to connect your old school DVR, and you're like moving or moving out. Yeah, you're moving out.
I got one right here.
Or like the random HDMI cord that you don't need ever anymore for really anything. And you're moving or you're packing up or you're decluttering, and you look at it and you're like, yeah, I'm keeping that. You never know. I might need it. And your box has grown from like 1 cord in college to like 35 cables. And that's how you see a lot of people on the race course is way, way, way overloaded.
Yeah, I should talk, man. I ride with my aero wheels full of water. Which is, point that out again. If it's raining the night before and you have your bike out and you have aero wheels with like holes in them, or like I did, make sure you have the drain facing the right way.
Yes.
But also, it's great. Yeah, that's a good point. I remember there was a time when we were lining up for Louisville And one of our buddies was like, he looked at me. We were already getting ready to get in the water, and he goes, "Ah, shit, I forgot to put my bottles on my bike." And I was like, and he didn't care because he was a experienced guy. He had a great race. I don't know what he ended up doing, if he had got some or he just waited at the first aid station. But you know, he didn't have anything, and he did quite fine. So it's like
Did quite fine.
had a quite fine race. Some people, you know,
Mighty fine.
that's, I guess the point there is like, don't over stress it, because they're, you know, they do have aid stations. It's not like going out on a walkabout where there's no, you got to survive on your own, you know, so, you know, balance it out like everything in life. Sit in the middle.
Yeah. And you'll be quite fine. Jeff Terra, what is the least expensive way to get power on the bike? I've heard of the brand Stages and swapping a crank arm. Is that a DIY or do I need my bike shop to do it? Great question. Again, expensive is a relative term. For some people, $200 is expensive. For some people, $2,000 is expensive. There are so many options now for power meters. They are pedal based. They are crank based. Not just both arms, but you can get one, single side crank, hub. I mean, you name it, and they've got it. I think for most people, the pedal base is probably the most inexpensive route to go. There are a lot of companies out there that do a pretty inexpensive option of a single arm power meter. I always say, go with a different brand. If you can get both sides, get dual side. It's always a better option, in my opinion, to get. It tends to even things out in terms of not just your pedaling and your efficiency, but if there are errors, you've got kind of one to back up or contradict the other, which I think is very helpful when it comes to power meter stuff. The only power meter I've ever owned in my entire life is Cork, and they've never in my entire life had an issue with a Cork power meter. They're a little bit more expensive, but I compare Cork to Garmin. Garmin's are expensive because if you call them and you're like, "Hey, I dropped my Garmin. I've got a little bit of scratch on the band. Everything else works perfectly." Like, you know what? We'll just send you a new one. They send you like a brand new Garmin for whatever reason. So you pay for great customer service, you pay for a great product, and that's what you get with Cork. Again, no affiliation, no discounts, no specialness, but that they are the best. So I would save and use that. So buy a cheaper trainer and buy a better power meter, because that's what you're going to race with, and you don't need it. You can use the power meter when you're inside. It's like I never understand that. It's like, spend the money on getting a power meter you can race with. Spending the extra money on a trainer that you can't race with is, I don't know. It's never made sense to me. But again, a lot of different options. Great entry level. Garmin has pedals. PowerTap has pedals. I think Wahoo has bought Speed Play, so they've got pedals. There's a lot of options. Always go dual sided if you can.
I agree.
I concur. CJ Dungan. I do a lot of training indoors. What are some strategies to be ready for the elements? Wind, rain, heat, cold, other athletes. Also, should I limit the entertainment during indoor sessions to develop focus and mental toughness? Speak my language, CJ. There is really no way to get used to the elements without being in the elements. There's just not.
Pain caves.
Yeah, the pain caves with Christmas lights and 3 refrigerators and Pellegrino water and 3 fans blowing at industrial level. It's yes, and 3 screens with Zwift and Trainer Road and a virtual course and whatever you're watching on Netflix. It's like, holy hell, like no wonder you can't focus. And then when you get to like a race and it's just you and the black line and the cones, like no wonder. A couple things. One, go out in elements, right? If you don't feel comfortable riding on the road, hop on your mountain bike, right? Do things that make you have to work with handling. I was listening to an interview with Patrick Lange a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about one of the best thing that he's done for his cycling is learn how to handle his bike better. That his biking has gone to like new levels the last 3 to 4 years. And they were asking, hey, about, what guy. He said, well, I started to ride with all these pro riders, and at the bottom of a mountain, they had to wait for me for minutes. For minutes. They had to wait for me for minutes. That's how much longer it took me to get down these descents than it did them. And, so by training with them and following them, I was able to, learn how to take lines, learn how to take corners. That's the time. So no more effort and fitness wise, no special training philosophy, no special workout, just learning how to ride your bike is what he gives most of his credit to being a better biker. So many people could learn from that. Get outside, be comfortable, hop on a gravel bike, hop on a mountain bike, anything to get outside and work through. People really underestimate how much you have to use your core and your lower back when they're riding. And like, I can do some planks and okay, do a minute of planks and then tell me it's the same as being an aero for 6 hours. It's not. Okay. There's no substitute for race train. And there's no substitute for specificity. There's zero substitute. Get outside on the bike. The running is a little bit easier because most people will choose to run outside over the treadmill. So you can train in rain and wind and heat, but again, on the run, that's not going to affect you. But the swim is the other one, right? People are only want to swim in the pool and then wonder why everything falls apart. Seriously, go. People try to compare the two. Is go stand on a pool deck and look at the pool and look around you. You got a lifeguard, you got air conditioning, you got a wall clock, you got your own lane. You can see the bottom. You can stand. Then go stand out on a beach or a pier or whatever it is and go look out in the open water and tell me they're the same. Tell me the same. Can't see the bottom. Can't stand up. No lifeguard. 3,000 people. You're swimming. That's it. That's the only similarity. You're swimming in water. Everything else, totally different. And so you have to put yourself in that situation. No matter how much you train in pool swimming for open water, there's no substitute for open water. And I think that's the biggest things that slow down people the most in racing is their inability or their lack of preparation and being ready for open water swimming and demands of it. And then you go into an event like the open water swim, not prepared. You come out with, going back to one of our very first question, you come out with less fight, right? Because you had to put some fight forward and put some fight forth in the swim with less energy, okay? To now put up another fight on the bike in a surrounding that you weren't ready for. Another example, Wisconsin. Like there's the virtual riding compared to the on course, like Wisconsin, there was nothing that you did to prepare yourself. It was I kind of made a joke like Robbie, Wisconsin. It was I think I said like how those track workouts pay off, for like the people who are barely making it through and like the guys that and girls were insanely passionate, but they just beat them down. The people that did the best were the toughest. They're the toughest. People dropping like Britt McMahon, who won the race. Guarantee you he wasn't the fastest, fittest person that day. Guarantee you. You get some loaded pros, but they either dressed terribly, right? I think they admitted that. I think you even overheard somebody talking about it. So it took him out of the race. It's about being smart, right? And he's been for like 20 plus years. And he dressed the right way and he won the day. And so you have to put yourself in those kind of situations to learn about yourself and to learn how to handle a bike and learn not to be scared. Most people lost their race the day before when they looked at the weather. I'm terrified of going down those hills. Some people are like, I've been down hills in the rain, no big deal. Mm-hmm. Zero. I'm all good. Like we had a bunch of athletes that are like, because I think there were a bunch of training weekends. I think you were even on one of them. Right. We had up in Wisconsin where, you rode the course and it was pouring down, which didn't happen in race day Wisconsin. It rained, but it wasn't like a dangerous like down. It was just cold and windy, which is a whole different story. But they were like, I did two or three rides. It was pouring out rain. No big deal. So while they might not have enjoyed it, they had been through it, and there's just nothing you can do. And the raindrops on your sunglasses on Zwift won't prepare you for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, last year when I did that race, man, I was not trained up like normal, but I did a lot of mountain biking, and that is one thing, like you said. I mean, the other thing is this kind of goes back to that zone 2 question a little bit for me in a weird way, because, I don't like riding outside either. I rode the Wisconsin course, I think, twice last summer. And that was about the extent of my outdoor riding. And I did a lot of mountain biking it was basically a 3-mile loop, and I'd just do it, maybe like 6 or 8 times or whatever. And same with, back in Nashville, we go to the trace. Yeah, that was the best. But normally I just had a loop, and then we did that airfield thing, and it was boring as shit. But I think my point is that a lot of people like to get out and go for a ride at maybe a 80 miler and have all new scenery and shit like that. But I say look for loops that you feel safe on, and that you can deal with, and it's not going to be super dangerous or whatever. But that you got to get past that quote unquote boredom part of it. I really love that. One of the mountain bike loops I was doing, I would just kind of feel them out, and I would, it's sort of like repeating the same workout over and over. I like to do that because I like to gauge it, rather than doing a creatively new ride every weekend. It's fun, don't get me wrong, to do stuff like that. But for me in training, like when I think of training and racing and that sort of stuff, I like to compare similar progress, through loops, or doing the same running routes and things of that nature, and repeating hills. And, like repeating hills is a great one. There's got to be a place where you can go out and just kind of go up and down that hill. It would suck probably, but after a while you start to like it. And I think those are the things that we can look for a little bit more in our training, because it's I don't give a shit about going 80 miles and not covering the same road. I'm all about just putting in the work and figuring out ways to, get better, and not really worrying about the overall pace and things of that nature. That's the thing. As I said last year, mountain biking got me into doing that Ironman, because I wasn't really in the mode for it at all. I was thinking like, shit, where am I going to ride? I don't want to sit on a trainer for 4 months. And of course the handling, if you go out and it's a bad day up there like it was in the downhills, and that was the thing about it last year. It was so bad, and so many people were so cautious, and there was just really no speed at all out on that course for anybody, because it was just too dangerous of people braking and stopping and all kinds of crap. So anyway, I think, yeah, you're right. There's no real substitute. You got to kind of get in it a little bit, a lot, and not worry about your times.
Yeah, excellent point. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can, but you're in a room.
Yeah, now I'm in a room. I think my pod track died, so that's a perfect place for us to wrap it up. We'll try to get to the rest of these questions next week. I definitely want to get to John Seifert's, but that was I guess that was a cue. Batteries are dead. So the podcast is toast. Hope you've enjoyed today's podcast. As always, we appreciate you. We love you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com, and is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. Looking for coaching for the remainder of 2023, or you're interested in a race training plan, good. The website has all the information we have on there. If you have any specific questions for Mike, he's available, CrushingIron@gmail.com. If you need anything from me specifically, c26coach@gmail.com.
All right. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great, man.
Oh, okay. It's a funny little note here. I have an athlete who's doing a half marathon this week, and he texted me earlier, and he said, hey, strategy for Saturday? How about I should go out hard and then add speed? I said, that's perfect.
I like it. And cover your watch. Yeah, put duct tape over your watch and just floor it and see what happens.
Go out hard and add speed. Yeah.
I like it. It's like bury myself, resurrect myself, die again. That's basically what he's saying. I love it.
Yeah, I know you got it in you, buddy. Go get it out. All right.
Good. All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
All right, buddy. See you, man.